Hi everyone. I need to get this out there because honestly, I don't even know who to talk to about this in real life. It's about my family, specifically my older brother, who I'll call Todd because that's not his name and I don't want to cause any unnecessary trouble, but it fits his mood perfectly. So, a little background. Our dad passed away about a year ago. It was really hard on both of us, but we seemed to be doing okay, you know? We relied on each other. Dad wasn't a rich man, but he had a house paid off and some savings. His will was simple. Everything was to be split 50-50 between Todd and me. We talked about it, hugged each other, and promised to do Dad's bidding together. I thought we were on the same page. I really did. But looking back, I can see that the signs were there. Todd started getting really involved. He took on all the paperwork, saying it was too much for me to handle during my grief. He was always the responsible one, so I didn't really think much of it. He would say things like, "Just leave it to me, bro. I'll handle it." I was grateful then. I was in a miserable state. But then he started to be strangely secretive. If I asked a simple question about the probate process, he would get worried and change the subject. His phone was always face down, and he answered calls in another room. I put it down to stress. God, how wrong I was. This is the story of how my biological brother tried to steal everything from me, and what I did about it. So like I said, Todd took over everything. He set up meetings with the lawyer, and would just give me a quick summary afterward. "Everything's fine," he'd say. "Just a lot of boring legal stuff. You don't need to worry about it." He made it sound like he was doing me a huge favor, shielding me from the stress. But the summaries got vaguer and vaguer. When I asked to see any paperwork, he'd pat me on the shoulder and say, "I've got it filed away safely. It's a mess, you wouldn't understand it anyway." That should have been my first huge red flag. I'm not a lawyer, but I can read. I started feeling like a kid being told the adults were handling things. The real change, though, was in his attitude. He started making comments. Little digs. He'd say stuff like, "Dad would have wanted his money to be used wisely." And then he'd look at my 10-year-old car. Or he'd talk about how some people don't know the value of $1. It was always just vague enough that I couldn't call him on it without looking paranoid. I felt so guilty for even suspecting him. This was my brother. We shared a childhood bedroom. He taught me how to ride a bike. I kept pushing the bad feelings down, telling myself I was grieving and seeing problems where there weren't any. I was trying so hard to trust him, but the pit in my stomach just kept getting bigger. The moment everything changed was a complete accident. I was over at Todd's house to help him move a new couch into his living room. He was ordering me around like usual, and he got a phone call he had to take privately. He stepped into his home office, shutting the door behind him. While he was gone, I noticed his laptop was open on the kitchen counter. A PDF was up on the screen. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear. I was just glancing at it, and I saw my dad's name. And the word codicil. My heart just dropped into my shoes. A codicil is an amendment to a will. Why was Todd looking at that? I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop myself. I took a step closer. The document was an email from his personal email account to his lawyer. The subject line was, "Final draft for review." And right there, in the body of the email, I read the words that made my blood run cold. As discussed, confirming the change to a 70-30 split in my favor, due to my greater financial responsibility and the brothers' instability. I heard his office door creak open. I jumped back from the counter like it was on fire. My hands were shaking. He wasn't just being secretive. He was actively working against me. Todd walked back into the kitchen, still talking on his phone. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Just make sure it's all buttoned up tight." "Thanks, Bill." He hung up and gave me this huge, fake smile. "Sorry about that. Just some work stuff. You ready to get this couch in place?" I couldn't even look at him. I felt sick. My face must have been white because he actually asked, "You okay? You look pale." The concern in his voice sounded so real. That was the worst part. He was a fantastic liar. I had to say something. I couldn't just pretend I didn't see it. I took a shaky breath and said, "Todd, what's a codicil?" The smile on his face didn't even flicker. It was terrifying. "A codicil?" he said, drawing the word out like he'd never heard it before. "Oh, that old thing. That was just something the lawyer suggested early on. A dumb idea about setting up a trust. It was way too complicated and expensive. I told him to forget about it." "Why?" He was so smooth. He made it sound like the most boring, dismissed idea in the world. He even chuckled a little. "Don't tell me you've been reading legal jargon on my computer? You'll put yourself to sleep, buddy." He clapped me on the back and walked over to the couch. "Now come on. Let's get this thing moved before the game starts." I just stood there, frozen. He had an answer for everything. And he made me feel stupid for even asking. I helped him move the couch. I don't even remember doing it. My body was on autopilot while my mind was screaming. He was lying right to my face with a smile. That email wasn't old. The timestamp was from 2 days ago. After I left his house, I drove to a parking lot and just sat there. The initial shock wore off, and this cold, hard anger started to set in. This wasn't just about money. This was about our dad. Our family. He was trying to rewrite history and paint me as some unstable loser to justify stealing what was rightfully mine. I thought about all his little comments. Used wisely. Financial responsibility. He was building a case against me in his head, and probably in the lawyer's head too. I felt so betrayed. This was the guy who stood next to me at Dad's funeral. We cried together. But the anger was quickly followed by a deep, deep sadness. I was losing my brother. The person I thought he was never really existed. The grief for my dad felt fresh all over again, mixed with this new, horrible loss. I cried in that parking lot. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I cried for my dad, and I cried for the brother I thought I had. After I got all the tears out, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. But I also wasn't going to scream and yell. That's what he expected. He thought I was emotional and unstable. So I decided to play his game. I was going to be the calm, trusting little brother. I was going to kill him with kindness and patience. The next time I saw him, I apologized. "Can you believe that?" I said. "Hey man, sorry about the other day. I've just been really stressed and my mind is all over the place. I trust you to handle everything." The look on his face was priceless. It was a mix of surprise, smug satisfaction, and relief. He ate it up. "It's no problem, little bro," he said, his voice oozing fake sympathy. "I get it. This is a lot for anyone to handle. Just let me take care of it." And so, the act began. I became the most supportive, oblivious brother on the planet. I asked him how the boring paperwork was going. I thanked him for dealing with it all. I killed the part of me that was furious and heartbroken, and I played my part perfectly. I needed him to think he had won, that I was completely in the dark. Because I was already planning my move. I knew I needed proof. A screenshot of that email wouldn't be enough. He could say I doctored it. I needed something concrete. And then I remembered my dad's best friend, Uncle Jerry. Jerry is a retired notary public. He and my dad were friends for 40 years. He's a straight shooter, and he loved my dad like a brother. I went to see Jerry and told him everything. I showed him the screenshot I'd managed to sneak of the email on Todd's laptop. The old man's face got real grim. He said, "Your father's will was clear as day. 50/50ths. He talked to me about it the week he signed it. He wanted everything equal between his boys." Then Jerry told me something I didn't know. He said, "I was the witness on that will, son. And any major amendment like a codicil would need to be witnessed too. By me, preferably to keep things consistent. Your brother's lawyer hasn't contacted me about anything. A wave of relief washed over me. Todd was cutting corners. He was trying to do this quietly, probably with a lawyer who didn't know the full story. Jerry looked me dead in the eye and said, "What do you need me to do?" I had my secret weapon. With Jerry on my side, the plan came together. We decided to use Todd's own greed against him. Jerry would call Todd, acting like a concerned old friend. He'd say he was just checking in on the estate process, wanting to make sure everything was honoring Dad's wishes. I listened in on speakerphone when Jerry made the call. Jerry was brilliant. He sounded so genuine. He said, "You know, your dad was so proud of both of you. He just wanted peace between you boys when he was gone." Todd, of course, launched into his performance. He sighed heavily and said, "I know, Jerry. I'm trying. It's been tougher on my brother than he lets on. I'm handling everything to keep the pressure off him. I think Dad would understand." Then Jerry laid the trap. He said, "Well, you know I notarized the original. If you need any amendments witnessed to make things easier, you just let me know. I'd be happy to help make it all official." He made it sound like he was offering his full support. You could almost hear Todd's gears turning. He saw a path to making his fake codicil look legitimate. He took the bait. "You know, Jerry, that might be really helpful. Let me talk to the lawyer and I'll get back to you." He was so eager, he didn't suspect a thing. A week later, Todd called Jerry back. He said his lawyer had drawn up a simple clarification document and asked if Jerry could come to the lawyer's office to notarize it. Jerry agreed immediately. But here's the thing, Jerry may be retired, but he's sharp. He knows the law. He called me right after and said, "A proper codicil doesn't get notarized at the lawyer's office after the fact with just one witness. That's not how this works. He's trying to make a fake document look real." The day of the meeting, Jerry wore a wire. Well, not a wire, but he used his phone to record the whole conversation. He walked into that office, and Todd and his lawyer presented him with a document that indeed changed the split to 70/30, citing financial imprudence. On my part. Jerry played his part perfectly. He acted slightly confused. "This seems different from what your dad and I talked about," he said. Todd's lawyer, who clearly didn't know the whole story, just said it was a late-in-life change of heart. Todd nodded along, looking solemn. Jerry said, "Well, if this is what needs to be done," and he made a big show of stamping and signing the paper. He had them dead to rights on recording, admitting to the whole scheme. The trap was sprung. I didn't waste any time. The next day, I asked Todd to meet me at Dad's old house. I said I wanted to talk about what we were going to do with the place. He showed up looking smug, thinking he was about to finally have full control. I was waiting for him in the living room. I didn't say hello. I just hit play on my phone. The recording from Jerry's phone filled the quiet room. We listened to his lawyer talk about my financial imprudence. We listened to Todd agree with him. The color drained from Todd's face. His smugness vanished, replaced by pure panic. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "That's a private conversation. You can't do that." "I didn't," I said, my voice calm even though my heart was hammering. "Jerry did. And he's a notary. He has a duty to report fraud. And this?" I held up my phone. "This is a masterpiece of fraud." For the first time, Todd had no smooth lie ready. He just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The mask had finally slipped off completely. When Todd finally found his words, the truth came pouring out. And it was pathetic. He didn't even apologize. He started justifying himself. "You don't get it," he said, his voice getting higher. "You've always been the favorite. Dad always cut you slack. You struggled with stuff, and he was always there to bail you out. I had to work for everything I got." I just stared at him. "What are you talking about? Dad helped us both. Equally. No, he insisted. When your business idea failed, he helped you out. When I wanted to start my company, he told me to get a bank loan. It was never equal. This. He pointed at me. This is just making things even. I deserve more because I've always had to do more. He had built up this entire fantasy world in his head where he was the victim. He'd been holding on to this resentment for years, and my dad's death was his chance to finally even the score. He wasn't just greedy, he was delusional. Hearing him say it out loud made me feel sorry for him for a split second. What a sad way to live. I let him finish his little tantrum. When he was done, I laid out the new reality. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You are going to call your lawyer and tell him the codicil is void. You will tell him you made a terrible mistake and that you are deeply ashamed. You will then recuse yourself entirely from the estate process. He started to protest, but I cut him off. If you don't, I will send this recording to the State Bar Association. I will also file a police report for fraud and attempted theft. You will lose your license. Todd is a financial advisor, a fact that now seems incredibly ironic. His face was ashen. His career, his reputation, it was all on the line. He was trapped. But that's not all. I continued. You are going to pay Jerry's fee for his notary services out of your own pocket. And then, you are going to tell Mom exactly what you tried to do. That last part hit him the hardest. The thought of our mother knowing what he'd done was worse than any legal threat. He looked utterly defeated. The revenge wasn't about hurting him physically or financially. It was about exposing the truth. It was about holding up a mirror and making him look at what he'd become. Todd did everything I said. He made the call to his lawyer right there in front of me. He sounded broken. The lawyer, to his credit, was furious and dropped Todd as a client immediately. Then came the call to our mom. I listened on speakerphone. He had to confess everything to her. The lies, the fake document, everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line when he finished. Then we heard her start to cry. Not loud sobs, but this quiet, heartbreaking crying of a mother whose children are broken. She just said, "Oh, Todd. My boy. What have you done?" and hung up. That was the worst sound I've ever heard. In that moment, my revenge felt hollow. There were no winners here. We had all lost. Todd sat on the floor of our dad's living room and cried. I didn't comfort him. I just walked out. The fight was finally over, and all that was left was the wreckage. The estate was settled properly, 50-50, just as Dad wanted. I used my half to pay off my debts and put a down payment on a small house. I don't know what Todd did with his money, and I don't care. It's been 6 months now. Todd and I don't speak. Mom tries to stay neutral, but it's hard for her. Holidays are complicated. The anger is mostly gone. It's been replaced by a kind of sad acceptance. I accepted that the brother I knew and loved was gone long before any of this happened. I accepted that some people choose to live in their own bitterness, and you can't save them from that. The real victory for me wasn't beating him. It was finally seeing him clearly and choosing to no longer let his actions control my life or my emotions. I grieved for him like I grieved for Dad, and then I started moving forward. So, that's my story. If you're going through something similar, with family and money bringing out the worst in people, here's what I learned. First, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let anyone, especially family, make you feel crazy for wanting transparency. Second, get your own help. Don't rely on the person you're suspicious of to handle things. Talk to a lawyer yourself. Find your own, Uncle Jerry, someone trustworthy who knows the facts. Third, and this is the hard part, revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about protecting yourself and upholding what's right. The best revenge is living well and not letting their toxicity become yours. Mostly, just know that you're not alone. Greed changes people, and it's heartbreaking. But you can get through it. You can come out the other side with your integrity intact, and that's worth more than any inheritance. Thanks for listening.